ready for the afternoon session of MIT Media Lab Southeast Asia Forum, Beyond the Elephant in the Room. So today we are going to talk about another biggest topics nowadays, which is the difference, possibilities, and challenges posed by the decentralized networks in the digital age. And later on, we'll be hearing about the use of AI or artificial intelligence in augmenting human intelligence rather than replacing it. And this has also been a controversial topic for quite some time, especially when we have so many AI dystopia movies. But today we'll be focusing on the other side of the story. And last but not least, we will be addressing the material science, which has made such an advancement that we can now make the impossible possible through the weaving of bits, atoms, and computation into matter. So ladies and gentlemen, while you're walking into the hall, before we dig deep into the interest of values theme session, please welcome one of our local keynote speaker onto the stage, Khun Nattawut Amon Viwat, who is the chairman, True Digital Group, on the stage.
สวัสดีครับ Thank you very much. Good afternoon. So I'm also very inspired by Media Lab, and it's a real honor for me to be part of this event, to be able to welcome Media Lab team and welcome all of you, especially the students that I met. So many of you, I also get inspired. I believe that the Media Lab mindset and examples will also inspire our student population as well to be able to innovate and think everything is possible. So today I would like to talk a little bit about human and AI and what we see as the opportunities and challenge in Thailand. I would like to start with my own personal journey. 2013, one of my friends, Kun Cholatip, she's blind, a blind mother of two, normal eyesight kids, right? One day, the daughter draw her a picture. I think it was Mother's Day or something. Gave it to her and tell her that, I love you, mom. And the mom, who was blind, right, Kun Ik, asked the daughter, what's the picture? What did you draw? What is you drawing for me, right? And she was very shy, 6 years old. She just ran away. Kun Ik called me. She can use smartphone. She can take a photo. She sent a photo to me, and she called me and said, Nat, can you help explaining this photo, this picture for me? And I explained it to her, and I got into a discussion and saying that, why don't we have a platform where hundreds of volunteers, standing by 24/7, be the eyes for the blind, right? That was 2013. Some of those pictures, for example, these are some of the struggles that the blind face every day, right? What's the expiration date on this package, right? Some of the blind went to the hospital, came back with several packs of medicine, but it got mixed up. And they asked, which one is my fever medication? So these things, human volunteers has been helping the blind. That initial thoughts about hundreds of volunteers, actually we gather around 120,000 volunteers until now, helping the blind see, explaining the pictures, the situation, right? Read books for the blind. 120,000 volunteers has helped the blind 200,000 times a month, right? 4 years ago, we launched AI bot, mostly OCR, to help the blind understand the document, the physical document, but also actually to do the image analytics and explain what is in the picture that they take, right? The instant help by AI 4 years ago, right? And we believe it will help with the instant, the quick response of AI helping. By the way, you are welcome to join Read for the Blind, Help Us Read communities. And I'm coming from a technical background, right? A lot of my friends are technical engineers, computer engineers. They said, why don't you invent something, right? Why don't we just use open source or invent something that help the blind using pure AI, right? Because, think about it. It's so beneficial. So that question has been stuck with us for a while now. And that question, I would hope that I will give for you to think about it, and I will come back to these questions later on in my presentation. I want to switch a little bit to the pain points in general business or general society that we feel that we are facing, and something that we are doing, and also something that I would humbly invite all of us, if you have ideas or solutions that we can collaborate together with True or with any of us that I will show, will gladly accept that collaboration with you. I probably cannot cover everything because there's everything that, a lot of things that AI can help. But let me start a little bit with what we are doing, and then I will get into 3 examples of those industries. At True Group, we are, as you know, telecommunication and tech companies. We have around 30 million subscribers in the mobile phone. We have around 4.8 homes online. We have 3.3 million subs in the TV. And also at True Digital, we are doing a lot of things. One is consumer, OTT, which is right now around 36 million active monthly user a month on True ID, actually in 7 countries. Merchants, we have point loyalty system. For enterprise, we do IoT, we do analytics, we do cybersecurity and telehealth, vRoom, but also in talent, upscaling, reskilling. We believe truly that there's a lot of gap in Thai society where we need to uplift the ICT skills. The first example I want to talk about is healthcare, right? This is quite a familiar sight for all of us. It's not because we don't have great doctors. We have great doctors, but it's so centralized in big hospitals. We have a disparity, and there are also insufficient supply in terms of the distribution of the service, right? So people have to get to the hospital at like 5 a.m., 6 a.m. and queue up, right, to make sure that they got their place before they actually go. And maybe sometimes one bring your mother, we bring 2 persons in the family to take care of her during the process, right? So what we are trying to do is to actually distribute that service throughout, right, without having to, centralize this system. And we are, lucky that we are being able to work with a lot of hospitals, including Juฬา Rama Siriraj, the major hospitals, and including many doctors, right? Right now, we gather around 400,000 users using telemedicine, and we truly believe in physical plus digital, right? As Media Lab always said in this event, right? Digital and physical combination is much better than pure online, right? So we established a few health corners, the small ones, like on the picture here, where you go in, you have a certain equipment, and then you meet the doctors actually online. But you are there physically, because not a lot of people, especially the elderly, can use a smartphone that well in terms of telemedicine. Maybe a certain chat application, but not telemedicine. So we are helping them on that, bridge the gap. But also, we also lucky to be able to work with Ramathipadi Hospital, establishing a bigger format, where we can collect blood sample, we can collect other samples, we can do certain X-ray, EKG, and then we can give a better care, right? So imagine the situation where instead of going to queue up at the hospital, suppose you have a diabetic, right? You have to go to hospital once in a while. Instead of doing that, you go to this corner, get your blood drawn in the morning, and immediately just go to work afterward. You don't have to miss your work. You go to work, the blood samples being tested. Once the result came out, you can meet the doctors online and the medication delivered to your home. That means 3 persons in the family doesn't have to miss work that day. And it's so important for grassroots, for the majority of Thai population, right? So this kind of vision, right, that we are trying to push. And we can only do that with the collaboration with all the ecosystems that we are working with. We also do the smart EMS, emergency medical services. Basically, there are a lot of things, and majority of the change is being done with the human side of it. The tech is just a small part of it, right? We are a tech company, but doctors and the hospitals, it's super important in this, right? And I cannot claim credit of this. We are the supporter of the technical, but the design thinking is super fascinating for me. So first of all, imagine this, right? Around Sirirat area, there are a lot of small communities where you can only access through motorcycles. And when people get the heart attack, right, immediately you cannot, it takes around average 24 minutes from the hospital to the home and then back. That means 48 minutes, 24 minutes times 2, right? So what happened to your heart when you have heart problem 24 minutes is super important, right? So what Sirirat doctor has been doing is to train wind motorcycle around the area, right? So each wind have maybe 1 or 2 someone who can train to do CPR and do basic care. When the patient or the relative call the hospital to the call center, immediately the system send back the SMS, right? They click on the link. Immediately they click on the link, the location gets sent to the center and select the nearby motorcycle win. And the motorcycle go into the home. It takes maximum 5 minutes. Start doing CPR. And in the meantime, the location sent to the system, ambulance go out to the exact location, doesn't have to talk. And also the third thing is that link will carry forward the video conference so that the hospital and the center can help explaining things and help do the basic care before the 24 minutes the ambulance will arrive. Once the ambulance arrive, the ambulance is equipped with 5G and also connectivities, the camera. The senior doctors at the hospital can also start taking care of the patient immediately, right? And so those are, as you can see, right, it's not just tech. Basically, I would say 80% of it is human and process, right? So this kind of design thinking and collaboration, that's what we're talking about in terms of tech and human, right? So I would like to show a little bit of the video and what we talk about.
เมื่อมีเหตุร้ายเกิดขึ้นเราพร้อมดูแลคุณด้วยบริการ Sirirat Smart EMS แพลตฟอร์มอัจฉริยะสำหรับรถพยาบาลฉุกเฉินที่โรงพยาบาลศิริราชพัฒนาร่วมกับ True Health เพื่อยกระดับการรับส่งผู้ป่วยให้มีประสิทธิภาพมากยิ่งขึ้นด้วยเทคโนโลยีเครือข่าย True 5G ซึ่งประกอบไปด้วย Smart Telemedicine with 5G เทคโนโลยีการแพทย์ทางไกลที่ทำให้แพทย์ได้เห็นผู้ป่วยเสมือนไปอยู่จุดเกิดเหตุเอง Smart EMS Information System ระบบจัดเก็บข้อมูลผู้ป่วยฉุกเฉินที่สะดวกต่อการใช้เหมาะกับงานเร่งรีบลดภาระงานด้านเอกสารเพิ่มเวลาในการดูแลผู้ป่วยให้มากยิ่งขึ้น Smart AI for EMS System เทคโนโลยีประมวลผลข้อมูลผู้ป่วยหาตำแหน่งจุดเกิดเหตุและแนะนำโรงพยาบาลที่เหมาะสมกับผู้ป่วยมากที่สุดด้วยเครือข่าย True 5G ทำให้การดูแลผู้ป่วยระหว่างนำส่งโรงพยาบาลเต็มไปด้วยประสิทธิภาพและความปลอดภัย
So all the credits goes to the doctors and the staff members who have the domain expertise, right? And tech is part of it. It's try to do the design thinking to help out, right? So, and also Rama as well as to build this kind of ecosystem. In the future, this is the ideal pictures, but I do believe if we have a connected healthcare ecosystem, holistic view, right, we can provide a much better solutions for the population, right? That will include not just hospitals, but also include preventive medicine, personalized medicine, network of doctors, telemedicine platform, insurance companies, and many others. And the challenge is still there, right? And if we have those kind of, if some of you have those kind of expertise, I'm very welcome to work together on this, right? There are a lot of personalized and precision medicine challenges out there, the AI-based radiology, the patient risk identification, the natural language, sorry for the typo, but natural language to help providing primary care and also nanotechnologies in medicine, right? So this challenge is the one that facing us not too far, actually facing us right now, and there are some solutions out there. I believe these are something that we need to tackle right now. Switch to the next one, agriculture, the largest industry in Thailand, right? There are a lot of inefficiency in the system and create also a very low quality of life for farmers, as well as environmental problems, right? We are try to do many things there, right? For crops, we can use satellite and drone to help predict the early detection of problems. For cows, we do actually put some Fitbits on cow, similar to Fitbits. And we can have early warning about cow's health, right? So they can have a rest. Today, they don't have to go out in the sun and just, they can rest. These kind of things actually out there. And there's actually a actual positive ROI, a positive return within a year for each of the small dairy farmer. Poultry and swine, this is a big business, industrialized level. We are using video analytics to detect the movement of poultry and swine. Believe it or not, we detect swine or pig, socialization pattern. So it's like human. When you start, to be quieter and go to the corner, it's similar. They start to get sick, and this actually help not just the doctors, the vets, but also help stop people going into the farm so much that you start to have an infection, right? So these kind of things really help Thailand to produce quality and also enough supply of food, right? Shrimp also. Shrimp, when they want to eat, they kind of surface to the surface of the water, eat, and if they full already, they go down. They go down. But a lot of times we give too much food, so we can use video analytics to detect whether shrimp is already going down, but there's still some food over there. So that means the quality of water can be managed better and things like that. So many of this is out there, but there are a lot of things to be cracked. I'm working with a lot of startups to try to crack this challenge. If some of you have these kind of capabilities or curiosity, very welcome to work together and try to solve this. This is, I think, one industry that Thailand can be the leader in the world. Okay, so I think we can help tackle this, right? A lot of challenge in the precision architecture, yield prediction, machine vision monitoring, robotics harvesting, things like this, right? A big return and big help to the society. Retail, my last example. We all know about this, right? We walk through the aisle, a lot of some empty space. We don't have the goods that we are looking for. We don't have the package we're looking for. So retailers are struggle to try to understand the operation, to try to increase the operation efficiency, try to meet the demand, and try to understand customer needs. What we are doing is actually help retailers detect the customer behavior, know the heat map, the walking pattern, where they stop by, which shelf they stop by, but don't pick it up, right? They stop by, look at it, walk away, something's happened there, we need to improve it. Or maybe a security reason, some of the, people without uniform go into the prohibiting zone, the staff zone. So a lot of things can be done. We're also doing empty shelf detection, actually to immediately let the staff know that they need to replenish that shelf, but also kind of work backward into inventory planning, right? To be better planned in terms of inventory as well. We do AI sensor detection to help identify early detection of the refrigerator, which one will be, broken, about to be broken, so we can try to fix things beforehand, right? And there are many AI and human combination that we can try to help solve, right? Demand prediction, as we said, right? Inventory management, customer behavior analysis, personalized ads and offerings, and also natural language for customer interactions. So this kind of thing is not totally new, but it's not there, up to the level yet. These are things that we need to crack it, to work together for a better application of this. And all this cannot be possible without collaboration. We need to work, between corporate startups, government, and also, researchers and inventors that make sure that we have the good network of ecosystem that can take up these challenges, right? So back to the beginning when I talked about the blind and how we try to help. As you can see from many examples, these are a combination of human and machine, human and AI, and human and tech, right? So back to those questions that I posed at the beginning, right? Whether I can replace our volunteers, 120,000 volunteers that are helping the blind right now with AI, right? With chatbot or AI, OCR, or image analytics. Along these 4 years that I start equipping AI on the platform, many volunteers actually come to me, right, and said, thank you for having this platform because it allows them to help the blind every day. It allows them to connect to the blind. Thailand infrastructure is kind of inaccessible for the blind, that we don't see many of the blind person working together side by side with us because they cannot work in our work environment, right? Which is a shame, right? It's something we need to improve. But why we are at that level, the problem is the blind is not connected to general population. And having this platform allow a lot of volunteers to understand the needs of the blind, and awareness is super powerful, right? And that is something I never discovered. I actually built this platform, create this platform to help the blind. Actually, I just realized it actually helped the volunteers as well. But secondly, these are the examples that got me realized so much. The mother of two, the blind mother, Kun Ik, right? She posted the picture that her daughter drew for her and asked the volunteer, what are these pictures? What is this picture? Please help me understand this picture. One volunteer said, there's snowing, on top of the mountain. The skills of your daughter is very good, It's very cute. So that's human response to this interaction. The second one, talk about the skills of the daughter, right? And the mother, I didn't post the mother, it's too much, but the mothers actually thank you and, appreciate it and feel much better than they just understand what's in the picture, right? The third one talked about maybe the mental skills or the attitude, right? That is so, your daughter has a very good imagination and things like that. And These kind of things, and there are hundreds of these examples that get me going, that just replacing volunteers with AI, at least AI of today, cannot help. AI have today can talk about, can answer, but immediately the characters in there, what is in the picture maybe, particularly the real photo, but the drawing like this, I doubt if AI can answer that at the moment. But beyond the picture, the motivation, the attitude, the love, AI cannot. Human can, right, at the moment. So human and AI, we will continue to work together, and I believe we will achieve what we could only dream of, right? And I got so much inspired by MIT. I also, as an MIT alum, I'm go there because I also read Being Digital. Media Lab is super, influential, and I want to say that when I hear you talk along these two days, I feel that if I'm one of the, actually anyone, but particularly the students, if we hear this, we feel that we have the ability to innovate, right? So I want to leave you guys with the last two slides that I feel, my personal feeling. Innovation are born from optimism. Innovation is hard enough already, right? If we don't wholeheartedly believe that it can happen, it's never gonna happen. As an innovator, if you are a pessimist, it's super hard to make things happen. You have to be the optimist. And I think it's born from optimism, and particularly if you can convince people with your optimism, I'm saying optimism is very contagious, right? People will follow you, people will follow your vision. So innovation are born from optimism. Secondly, anyone ever invent anything, will hear this. From it cannot be done. We did the platform for the blind. The first person who tell us is many of the blind said it cannot be done. It's not gonna be used. It's never gonna happen. A lot of people will say it cannot be done. Just don't believe them. A lot of time I tell my team that when you hear it, that's great. That's your chance to be the first. So I would like to leave you with this, and thank you so much for the opportunity to speak to you. Thank you very much. Enjoy.
Thank you so much, คุณณัฐวุฒิ อมรวิวัฒน์ Chairman of True Digital Group. Thank you so much for your contribution. So now, ladies and gentlemen, we will move on to the next session of Interest of Values, Digital Currency, Web3 and Trustworthy Networks, which has been a talk of the town for quite some time. We will hear about possibilities and challenges of the decentralized networks from different speakers. Joining us in these sessions are Mr. Guy Siskin, Dr. Louis Alonso, Sif Epstein, คุณกสิดิษฐ์ ตันสงวน and our moderator for this session is คุณ Jaramporn Chotikasathian, who is the director of the Bangkok Bank. Now, ladies and gentlemen, first, please join me in welcoming our first speaker. Welcome Guy Siskin to the stage, who is a PhD candidate, Human Dynamics Group from MIT Media Lab. Please take the stage.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Perfect. So I'm, as mentioned, I'm a researcher, PhD student at the Media Lab. My story is a bit different. I've actually been in the cryptocurrency Web3 space for almost a decade. And I started my way on it at the Media Lab. The MIT Media Lab is, for those who don't know, has actually taken quite a bit, maybe a better way to put it, the Media Lab has been pretty much at the forefront of digital currency since its inception. And I've had the fortunate opportunity to be a part of it. And I started my career at the Media Lab as a master's student doing some of the seminal research at the Human Dynamics Group. And then I, around 2016, took a break from the lab to actually spin out And this is something that's very common in the lab, to spin out the research and technology into a startup, into a blockchain project, which today is like one of the bigger ones. I'll talk a bit about that. And this year I came back to the lab to actually continue the PhD and continue the research, because there's really no better place to the nice thing about the lab is that it's like the best place to actually take, let's say, futuristic ideas, but kind of take them in a way that benefits society today. And with that, first of all, what is Web3? I'm going to use Web3 and blockchains kind of interchangeably. They more or less mean the same thing. But Web3 is really this effort, I'd say, a collective effort by many, many organizations, many researchers, to build the next level of the internet. And what does building the next level of the internet mean? Well, the idea is that we can build a new kind of internet that is more focused on the user, that is more focused on the people and less focused on intermediaries. It means that this is an internet of data, where users are in control of their own data, and it means that it's an internet of value, where value transfer is something that's baked into the system as a first-class citizen, and that's not something that is done with the internet today. And really, if I have to kind of pinpoint the technical benefit of Web3, is that it allows us to rely more on technical innovation when we're building a system, and less on, let's say, legal contracts or social contracts. And again, not that these are bad, but just we can actually remove the barrier of entry, we can actually remove the reliance of intermediaries. And Bitcoin is a great example, right? Bitcoin, you know, if globally speaking, before Bitcoin, the only way to transmit value between one person to another in different jurisdictions, that required the involvement of an intermediary, like a central bank, or several central banks and commercial banks and all that, then with something like Bitcoin, we can do that seamlessly in a matter of minutes. So I already touched a bit about the benefits of Web3, but if I put it more concretely, at the end of the day, Web3 can really lower the trust in the system. And by lowering the trust in the system, what it means is that, you know, we can build all kinds of applications that work on a global scale that are not possible today. You can think about health companies and insurance company and drug companies and all of the supply chain that goes from the manufacturing until at the end of the day, drug is prescribed to the user. You can think about building a blockchain system that kind of tracks all of that and really reduces the level of fraud that exists in the system, the level of like bad accounting and all of that. Like we have the technology to do that with Web3. We can definitely build a better and let's say more streamlined financial system. We're seeing that with crypto assets. We're seeing that with things like DeFi and NFTs. But also this is now starting to kind of flow back into the, let's say, traditional finance system, right? With centrally banked digital currencies or CBDCs, where actually nations and central banks, I mean, we'll hear about it in this session specifically, are actually working to leverage this technology to streamline the traditional financial system. And we can definitely do that with anything that relates to the end user. Right? We can build better social networks that are not controlled by single entities, where users are the sovereigns of their own data, and much, much more. Now, okay, all of that sounds great, but you know, you can't have, there's no free lunches, and blockchains still have a long way to go. And there are three core issues when it comes to blockchains. One of them is scalability. There's a cost. It's much slower, it's much more expensive to run. A lot of people are working on that. I do think this is actually becoming a solved problem, or will become a solved problem in the next few years. And then I think, then there's privacy and there's user experience. So user experience is not a problem in itself, because once we solve scalability and privacy, building good user experience is easy. But privacy, that's the core focus of my research and my work, but also it's probably the most difficult problem to solve in that system. And going a bit back, in our group, we've pretty much been the first to kind of identify the problem of privacy in the blockchain. So this is a paper from like 2015. It's now, I think, yeah, it's either the 6th or 7th, so it's a top 10 cited paper in the entire blockchain space. So there are thousands of papers in blockchain, or hundreds at least, many hundreds, and this is like one of the top 10 cited paper, and the reason is that the privacy problem is fundamental. And this was the first place we kind of identified it and really showed how you can actually bring privacy to the blockchain, how you can actually build better systems, and we had a lot of like subsequent work building on that, like sharing medical information across hospitals, like building supply chain tracking systems, and so forth. And also on the research side, this is less of my work, but my professor, my PI, Sandy Pentland, together with Thomas, David, and many others, they've written books on the subject. So if you want more reading, this is something I'd highly recommend. But I think what sets, I guess, our lab apart, and again, I'm standing here today, and I'm fortunate. I'm fortunate that I ended up at the MIT Media Lab and not, let's say, a more traditional department, because at the lab, and in our group specifically, like, you can't stop at the research stage. It's really about, okay, you do the research, now what? A paper is nice. Now what? The now what means that you gotta build the system, and you gotta deploy it, and you gotta make sure and show the world that these things can actually work and scale. And that's exactly what we've been doing, and that's what we've been doing for years. And one thing to say about Web3 systems, building Web3 systems, they are much harder than building infrastructure that's like in, let's say, the traditional web, right? Like any software system that you're used to, Web3 is much harder because of two things. One, there has to be zero downtime. It's like the internet. There cannot be a case when you go to the internet and the internet says, I'm sorry, I'm off right now. Doesn't happen. Same thing here. And the other problem is that because it relies less on trust and legal contracts, then the technology stack itself pretty much has to be as paranoid as it gets, right? It has to protect against all kinds of attacks from the inside, from the outside, from wherever. And that presents a lot of challenges. Now, okay, this is very high level, but I kind of want to give you a taste about the power and the stuff that we've been building. And the idea is to kind of pique your interest so that you can see what kind of potential these systems can have. So one pilot that we've done was with large Swiss corporations and organizations, and it was about building, let's say, a national or even a global supply chain / data sharing system that is much more secure, much more privacy preserving. The next one is a personal favorite. So like I said, I've been to the lab, I did my research, and the amazing thing about the lab is that it then allows you and encourages you to basically make sure that whatever research you're doing can actually impact the world. So in 2016, I took a break until this year to basically go ahead and launch a startup of my own. It's an MIT spin-off, and that startup was about building a blockchain that can have all of the benefits of Web3, but can also allow us to compute over encrypted data. So for those who don't know, and I'm not expecting you to know, but one of the bigger problems of Web3 and blockchains is that all data remains completely public, and obviously for mission-critical applications, that's like not something we can do, right? Like medical institutions, hospital, they will not use Web3 infrastructure. They will not use a blockchain if at the end of the day, their customer, their users, their patients' information would not be protected. And today, this blockchain is actually it's the biggest privacy-preserving blockchain. It's one of the biggest in general. It's doing billions of dollars in value transfer per year. There are thousands of applications deployed, hundreds of thousands of users using it. So this is just an example of how research becomes reality. And I want to kind of give you finish with two more examples, which are more, let's say, from what we're doing now into the future. So centrally banked digital currencies, just by a show of hand, like who's heard about CBDCs, if I can ask? Okay, so it merits explanation. CBDCs, or centrally banked digital currencies, is this idea that you can take the benefits of Bitcoin, Ethereum, other cryptocurrencies, because it's a very useful system, and then it asks the question, okay, now I'm a central bank, right? I'm the Bank of Thailand, I'm the Federal Reserve Bank, I'm the Bank of Israel, I'm the European Central Bank, doesn't matter. How can I take these new technologies that are powering Bitcoin, that are powering Secret, that are powering Ethereum, that are powering all of these things, and can we recreate those benefits in a more centralized national currency digital system, So the idea would be potentially, let's get rid of cash, let's get rid of these like 50 years old traditional finance systems, and let's build a new layer, a new financial layer on the state, on the national level. Now that clearly shows great promise and great benefits, but it also raises two big questions. And one of them is that is of privacy, right? In a survey by the EU, I think about 50-something or 60% of the people said that they're very concerned that this would lead to mass surveillance. And also governments, that these democratic governments, don't want that liability. It's not that they want to surveil people. But on the other hand, rightfully so, regulators are coming in and saying, okay, if these systems comes to play, how can we make sure there's no fraud? How can we make sure there's no criminal activity? And that's exactly what we're working on. We're trying to kind of balance these two out and work on a CBDC proposal that would give both citizens and governments the peace of mind that they can still audit, but users' privacy is still maintained. And then the other aspect, and you'll hear more about that from my lab mate, Ziv, is around decentralized social networks. So most of you have heard about a Twitter acquisition. Most of you have heard about like social networks in general. And there's a really hot debate right now about what does that mean for the future of media. So we all know that social networks are really beneficial, but the fact is that they're, at the end of the day right now, controlled by specific companies, specific entities. Their decision-making is not public, and there's the question about, can we create a more decentralized system where we can where it could be absolutely clear that there's no things, or at least can we minimize the effects of fake news, of trying to sway public opinion, of even employees accidentally or not accidentally misusing the powers when they are running the system. And the idea is, okay, can we create a decentralized social system that is like the internet, not controlled by any one party? And there's different ways to tackle this problem. The way that I tackle it, the way that the group tackles it, is can we use blockchains to solve this? That's number one. But the second problem, and I think that's the biggest problem, is how do we protect user privacy in those situations? So I don't want my DMs, I'm sure no one here wants their DMs to be public, their private messages to be public for anyone to see. I want to have control. Who can see the images that I share? Maybe just my friends, maybe just my family. I want to be able to create groups and segment them in certain ways. And there are a lot of questions about how to technically do that in a way that everyone's happy with. Thank you.
Hi everyone. Once again, it's fantastic to be here again. I have something very important to say, that is Kop Kum Krab. Thank you very much. I hope I am saying things properly. Anyway, so let's talk a little bit about dynamic urban planning, okay? And let's follow up a little bit with the idea that we were exploring. Is the slides working? No, I think the slides are not working. You don't see the presentation. Okay, that's okay. Don't worry. How are we doing today? I mean, like, MIT, we talk about technology, but we always have this kind of crash with our own technology. So, yeah, in the Media Lab, yeah, it's true. I mean, we have here a lot of people from the Media Lab. We always make demos, no? And then when you are in the demo, then something crashes, and we are so used to do that. I hope the slides are coming. If not, okay, cool. So Yeah, don't go for water because it's gonna be matter of seconds. I can feel it. It's coming. Okay, so unfortunately, I don't know how to dance, but it could be a good moment. So, in any case, I think we are having like a fantastic day today. We are exploring a lot of ideas. Okay, here it is. So, yeah. So, welcome. Let's talk about dynamic urban planning. Okay, that's a little bit my idea. And as we were talking this morning, we were talking about that climate change is one of the biggest challenges that we have as humans, the humankind. We are facing climate change, and we need to find solutions together, okay? The problem is that most of us, we think that technology will solve everything, okay? Yeah, the technology, you know, we are going to have, you know, very autonomous vehicles, very sustainable technology, green technology, and unfortunately, it's true that the technology is almost there, as we were talking this morning. And this morning, also, we were saying that the most challenging thing is not the technology, it's human behavior, okay? How can we start trusting each other? How can we work together? How can we find ways of sharing ideas? The problem here is that most of our, let's say, human ecosystems, we have built our human ecosystems and relationships based on predation, okay? Big fish eats a small fish. That's okay, no? I mean, when I ask this question, people say, yeah, that's how nature works, you know, so we are fine. To be honest, nature doesn't work like that, okay? Natural ecosystems are based on mutualism. So 85% of the natural ecosystems are collaborative. They find this kind of win-win situations, like this bird that has modified the pig during thousands of years of evolution to get inside of the flower and get the food. And the flower as well has modified during hundreds of years of evolution the shape so it can be pollinized by the bird. To be honest, I think the bird doesn't care that much about the flower doesn't care that much about the bird. However, they found this win-win situation that makes very robust ecosystems, and predation is only 5%, and it's used by nature to clean the ecosystem. So as humans, we are focused on the cleaning part of the ecosystem. I don't know if that is good, but if we don't start building human mutualistic systems, this is what we are going to start facing what I call the IoT bubble tower. The bubble tower. Okay, so if the car from Google doesn't speak with the car from Tesla, if the traffic lights that they're very smart from Samsung doesn't share data with the vehicles, if the smart city doesn't share data, this is what we are going to have, silence, okay? We are going to have very individualistic systems that they are very smart, but they are at the same time very stupid because they don't talk each other. And we will face this. We will have, you know, like a situation like this car from Tesla is very intelligent, but when it has a really, really important decision to make, cannot validate the decision, cannot ask to other vehicle to say, hey, what do I have in front of me? And that's why we have this kind of accidents. But we have autonomous vehicles already working in our society. For instance, planes. And planes are based on mutualism. That's very interesting. So the technology was there, and humans, we decide that Boeing and Airbus, they can share data. Actually, they have protocols. And they have protocols to share between each other data, to talk with the towers in the different countries, so we can travel all over the planet. When there is an accident, the companies, they share data, they are very transparent, and they try to solve the problem together. Actually, that helps to change protocols. Actually, they are open data. You can go on internet and see where is every single plane in the planet real time. That's very interesting. On the other side, we have another autonomous vehicle, trains, that in Europe, we were so afraid of being conquered 200 years ago by the other country next to us, and being conquered with this new technology, that we were so afraid that we made, you know, like our own protocols, different countries with different protocols, and 200 years later, I have my good friend Íñigo Gutiérrez, that is in the European Commission, trying to normalize the trains. So the technology was there, and it is taking humans 200 years to unify that the technology in order to work together. So once again, it's not that much about the technology, it's about humans working together. In the group, we have experienced this idea with micromobility. I already have shown to you the persuasive electric vehicle, and this vehicle is very smart because at this point, we think that the city is not sharing data, so the city is a little bit stupid. So the PEV needs to have 2 LiDARs, 1 stereo camera, a couple of normal cameras, a bunch of sensors, and a huge amount of computational power to be able to navigate by itself. But we could have other more inexpensive systems. This is our PhD, Naroa. She decided to develop this other vehicle with a very small computer, just 1 camera, and she was saying, listen, if the city starts sharing data with the vehicle and the different vehicles start sharing data, then we can have a mutualistic system, much, much inexpensive kind of mobility. So mutualism also can help us to be more efficient and have interesting impacts. But let's go back to humans and how humans are making decisions. Okay, in the group, we have built the Cityscope platform in order to help humans to make decisions. Because usually urban planners, when we have an idea or a project, this is what we do. We build a beautiful 3D and we show it to the public. And then the public, the people that is screaming louder, is the one that we listen to them. This is kind of not fair, so we are building data-driven, evidence-based simulations based on data in order to understand the socio-economical and environmental impacts of our decisions in urban planning. We have a collaboration in 5 continents, 10 different cities all over the planet, and we build digital twins with telecom data, energy data, bank transaction data, open source data, every kind of data. We are totally happy to get it and build a digital twin. And then what we do, once going back to Kendall Square, we take the city where we are working, we translate it into a Lego model, so people can play with the Lego model, and on top of the Lego model, we project the digital twin. So you could decide, oh, what happens if I build this park in the middle of the city? How is that going to impact into the socio-economical and environmental indicators? These are the socio-economical and environmental indicators, and they are aligned with the ESGs and SDGs, like Daniel Wood was talking this morning about that. So they are aligned with United Nations standards. However, a lot of people get lost with the indicators, so we have a very simple way of understanding our impact with heat maps, okay? Red is bad, green is good. That's something that I can understand, so I think that's pretty good. So when you put everything together, you have a multi-level platform where, in order to have a better governance in the city, where you can bring unlikely partners, you can bring the government, the industry, the citizens, and the academia, in order to have to make decisions in a multi-level, because engineers probably they will understand very well the radar, but maybe people from the community they understand better the heat maps. So what if we could build a decentralized autonomous organization where when you are making decisions, you could see the impacts and you could use the Cityscope as an oracle for that organization. So you are voting, but your vote, before you make the final decision, you can understand the impact of that decision. Let's look into the life-work symmetry. This morning we were talking about walkable cities, and this idea of having everybody, from the CEO of the company to the people cooking and cleaning, living together in the same neighborhood, okay? So this idea of walkable districts. So how can we foster this through decentralized autonomous organizations? The first challenge is how do we incentivize developers? Usually developers, they have an FAR, an amount of floors that they can build, and if they want to build more, they have to spend 5 years and a huge amount of money in order to change that legislation. So what if they could have this DAO where automatically the community can decide, okay, yeah, you can build more floors, but then 50% of that increase on value is going to go to the developer, but then the community is going to keep the power of the other 50%. And it will decide if it's going to invest in different amenities or if it's going to have an endowment, so with that money can foster innovation in the community. And then, of course, with the DAO, you can start deciding what is the best solution for that. Since we cannot mess with the real people in Cambridge, and DAOs are quite new, we have built a scientific population using artificial intelligence, a little bit same thing that Pat was doing with Einstein, but we are trying to get the information from the real community and try to have a scientific clone, let's say, of the existing community in Kendall Square, and then we will ask questions to this synthetic population. This platform is trying to explore different incentives for the population to move into Kendall Square. What if I reduce the rent of the housing? What if I do, I don't know, like fractional ownership? So we are exploring that ideas, and then the synthetic population is behaving and giving us answers. One example is if we reduce the income on the rent, we have learned that the low-income people, they will move into the community when the rent is very low, but high-income people, they will stop moving in the community if the rent is very low. So you need to find different incentives depending on the people, and that's quite important. With the same synthetic population, we have built this other tool where humans, in this case is me, you can vote, and you can decide, okay, I have these 2 towers, these 2 developments, and I can decide how many floors I am increasing that towers, and then how I'm going to invest the endowment. I'm going to invest in different amenities, in parks, etc. And at the same time that I am voting, the synthetic population is voting with me. And then I can see what is my vote in that population, and also we have synthetic experts. So we can see the opinion of the different experts in that population. So this is fantastic because we can explore different ideas. But the problem is, how do we incentivize people to use this new governance? How do we incentivize people to use DAOs or open governance? Or that's one of the biggest challenges. So we have some explorations in Andorra, for instance, where Andorra is a country of 70,000 people that they have 8 million visitors per year. And what we have done over there is like, okay, what if, the problem is that every weekend people go to the mountain to ski, and everybody, when the ski areas close, everybody gets into the road, and then they get into 1 hour of congestion. So what we have learned is that, imagine that we could have a data cooperative where people could share the data, and before you get into the congestion, your phone is telling you, listen, don't get into the congestion, I give you a coupon for taking a coffee or buying a new ski. If 40% of the tourists takes this coupon, we can reduce congestion into 75%. That's interesting. Also, we have our students, Ryan and Yasushi, they are working on this field, and they have built this, let's say, app that is helping us to understand our carbon footprint, and also is encouraging you to have a pro-social behavior to reduce your carbon footprint. So when you are not using the car, it's giving you tokens. And then you can interchange that tokens with coupons from the local community, and then you can interchange that coupon in the local shops. So you are at the same time fostering local consumption. Yasushi has a very interesting project that is the NAMAP. He was talking with a Japanese community in Tokyo, and he built a decentralized autonomous organization for them where they can take trees, so they plant trees, and then they have a reward of carbon credits. So he has connected the community with the real carbon credits providers, and through Solana, everything is kind of going through this platform, and he has built like a different community engagement process with this technology. I encourage you to read the article. It has been awarded by the Wire magazine. So we are starting to have kind of real projects with real people. That's a little bit scary. And I am finishing. So the next step is trying to have a real project in a real place. East Palo Alto, we are working with Emerson. It's the last community in the Bay Area that is facing gentrification and displacement. You can see the pressure of the companies on top of East Palo Alto. And we are starting to think, how can we anchor the community to this place? Actually, the community, they don't like, they love to live there, so they don't want to move. So how can we anchor the community there? So the first thing is we need to find jobs that they are aligned with the skills of the community. So you cannot bring Facebook or Google. You need to bring some kind of industry that is aligned with the skills of the community. Then you need to build housing for the people in the community, but also for the new people coming, amenities, and the endowment. The endowment to empower the community. We are working on the platform. If you invite me next year, I will follow up with this, okay? So I'm just throwing the idea. I am super happy to come back and keep exploring these ideas. Okay, I finish here. Thank you very much.
Hello, hello. Give it again up for Luis. It's tough when your slides kind of fall apart a little bit. Hello again. It's great to be here with you all. As Guy kind of set up, today I'm going to be talking about how we can potentially harness the power of decentralized social networks to reimagine the possible futures of social media. And I think this is actually a great moment in time to be thinking about these questions. We saw the takeover of Twitter by Elon Musk, and even less than 24 hours ago, I think he had a poll saying, should he step down? I think the poll said yes, but I don't know. It's all very confusing. But anyway, the future is open for social media, and what a time for us to be able to think about bringing good science, leveraging our understanding of cognitive science and social computing to create new opportunities for how we design the way that we all interact together. So, I believe, and hopefully you might agree, that social media has tremendous opportunities to help us tackle the elephant in the room. Whether that's global warming or corruption or inequality, social media is the way that we all connect, talk to each other, and figure out how to solve these problems. For one, it allows us to build ties in our lives with the people and collaborators and friends that allow us to achieve what we want in life. In addition, it allows all of us to pool our diverse pieces of information together into collective intelligence that allows us to tackle challenges that are equally difficult. And finally, it allows us to come together in collective action to solve these problems and coordinate the actions that we have as individuals. But unfortunately, centralized media for social communication falls short in a bunch of ways. For one, the data can be insecure, kind of housed in honeypots or data lakes that are together, which has lots of threats and opportunities for attack. In addition, there's this idea that if you're not paying for the product, you are the product. And living in an attention economy, all of the data is mined and extracted when we're clicking around and used by the platforms to advance their benefits, not ours. And finally, it can be hard for platforms to be the sole arbiter of truth, having to decide in near real time what is actually real and fake on these platforms. In addition, dark patterns can oftentimes prey on human biases. And if you think about the design of a lot of these platforms, they're actually informed from casinos and slot machines and gambling. They take the ways to get people hooked and addicted and keep people on the platforms. So there's a lot of patterns, such as infinite scroll, social validation, and bright colors. And all of these things are designed to keep us on the platform, keep us clicking, keep us scrolling. Another example is context collapse. The idea here being when you're scrolling your feed, you might see a serious news article of something that's happening in the world, coupled with cat memes and a recipe your grandma just posted. It's kind of confusing to have all of these different information channels in one place together. And in addition, fake news spreads because people are distracted. I don't know about you guys, but oftentimes my social media feed can look a little bit like this. Lots of validation, it's very chaotic. And this is not the kind of environment that's good for critical thinking and trying to understand what the future is all about. So, this is early. We don't really have these technologies yet. But what I'm going to show you is hopefully new steps founded in good science of how we can build decentralized social networks that can fit the needs both of individuals and society as a whole. So to do that, the first ingredient is accuracy and understanding the veracity of news online. So, in a paper that we published last year in Nature, we found that prompting people, that people actually can discern truth from falsehood. They're actually quite good at this. If you ask people, they're actually really good at figuring out what's true and false. But it's the social media context that actually can distract them. If you're online, you're clicking and scrolling, you're thinking of other social motivations for sharing content, such as pleasing friends and followers or signaling group membership. So people are distracted online and not thinking about the accuracy that they kind of have in their gut. This, however, suggests that if you are to remind people about accuracy, then this can actually tap into their core competencies for discernment and allow them to be more critically thinking when they're browsing social media. And the idea here is that this can actually spill over into the rest of your decision making, where if you're thinking about accuracy, then this actually will kind of spill over and allow you to think critically about things over the course of a session. So what might this look like? Say you're scrolling through social media and you see something kind of wacky like this. Well, depending on the context that you find yourself in, you might have different ways of engaging for this. And if there were something like this, just a little light nudge, hey, how accurate is this post? Maybe yes, maybe no. Then boom, you're thinking about accuracy. You're thinking about the veracity of claims, which may actually be important. So this idea of prompting accuracy, getting people to think about the quality of claims, is quite nice and actually has a lot of attractive properties. For one, related to the topic of this talk, it's a decentralized way to prevent misinformation. It puts control into users to be deciding what they believe is right and allows everyone to kind of tap into those core competencies that I talked about. In addition, it doesn't rely on traditional ways of fighting fake news, such as armies of content moderators who are trying to sift through posts in real time, or machine learning models that are trying to predict if something is high quality or low quality. It's a non-stationary, rapidly evolving problem, and a lot of these kind of centralized techniques can't really keep up with the scale and dynamics of misinformation. And finally, what you can do is actually take the responses of this. Before, we were just asking people, is it true or false? We didn't really care about what they said. We were just trying to invoke a mindset. But if you actually take the information that people respond with this, you can actually use that information to crowdsource detection of fake news and build labels across ideology. So we've also done work about how to deploy these accuracy prompts in practice. In Harvard Misinformation Review, we published a toolkit of different ways you can actually prompt accuracy. So the kind of classic way, the one I showed before, is for a given post, doesn't matter what it is, you just ask people, hey, is this accurate? And just prompting them, asking the question, makes people think about accuracy. But there's other ways to do it, such as public service announcements or social norms that we kind of talk about in the paper. In addition, in a follow-up, we do a replication across cultures. In particular, we look at the effect of prompting accuracy in 16 countries, in 6 continents, in 9 languages, with over 33,000 participants. So the idea is to really try to build toolkits that are both decentralized and generalizable across cultural contexts. So that's one ingredient, and now I'm going to hopefully provide a roadmap for if we were to actually build these kind of decentralized networks for the future, what might they look like? And I'm going to argue that the key ingredient that we need is this idea of interoperability. Have people heard this, interoperability for social networks, a little bit? Hopefully by the end, we'll be a little more excited about this. So the key idea here is that when you think about social media, what are the components of that? First, you have the underlying data. This is the network, who's connected to who, who's friends, who commented on what. And then there's the content of that, the posts that you might see, which are then filtered through some newsfeed or ranking algorithm and then displayed to a final user. However, the outputs of this algorithm are then displayed to the user in some form of interface. So this is the actual way that we engage with the material, and it's the design that we actually interact with. So, these are the kind of 3 components of social media. And when you, on your phone, go to facebook.com, guess what? Facebook controls all 3 of these things. It's Facebook's underlying data, and then all the content is run through Facebook's newsfeed algorithm, and then displayed to you with Facebook's interface. And guess what? Facebook's algorithm and Facebook's interface are designed for Facebook's benefit, not yours. So with this proposes a problem, because all of these components are shrink-wrapped into this one experience, and you have no control over which algorithms or interfaces you are interacting with. So interoperability is all about breaking that mold and having modular components across these 3 layers of social media, each having a rich ecosystem of third-party apps that exist in competition with each other to be the best thing, the thing that you want and serves your interests. So let's talk about each of these. The first is interfaces. What does it look like to build interoperable interfaces? And this is actually a hard question, because oftentimes it's a hard question to tackle scientifically. Usually in social sciences we think about causality and randomized controlled trials, but because of the controlled way that these platforms are, we don't actually have any way to kind of test or evaluate the quality of interfaces. So to try to combat this, we've built a tool called YourFeed. The idea is this is an ecologically valid social media research tool that allows people to experiment with their own ideas of what an interface for social media should look like. And in doing so, it actually provides a sandbox to develop, evaluate, and test these new interfaces for social media. So say you have a wacky idea of what the future of social media should look like. Maybe it's not just a scrolling newsfeed, but it's a spatial newsfeed that you walk around. I don't know. You can actually throw it on your feed and test it to understand what is the impact on user behavior. And people are already starting to do this, building kind of shared resources of humane design patterns and the right way to design these things. So we need to start to work together to build a language for this kind of future of interfaces. Next, let's talk about the algorithms. Similarly, there's lots of ways of thinking about the next generation of algorithms. Because currently, there's a lot of potentials here. Like people at CSAIL over at MIT are building kind of these interesting algorithms, but how do you evaluate them? Oftentimes, computer scientists will rely on theoretical guarantees or kind of abstract notions of, what you want out of a recommender system. Something like YourFeed, however, actually allows you to slot in an algorithm and behaviorally test causally the impact of the recommender system's policy on user behavior and collective dynamics. And I think this opens up a lot of really exciting possibilities and features. Instead of blindly optimizing for engagement, having the most sensational and the most outrageous content popping up to the top, which guess what, that's kind of how a lot of these platforms work today. Instead, we can explore optimization for different, maybe more interesting metrics, such as diversity or interestingness of content. And finally, when we think about data, we need to understand that, we are the ones creating the data. And in this current kind of Facebook model, Facebook controls all of our data and leverages it for its own benefit. So a potential future that was touched on earlier is this idea of potential data cooperatives. These data co-ops can serve as intermediaries between users and platforms and allow users to have access and control over their own data. The idea being here, instead of letting the the platform kind of control all of the data, a cooperative can act as a fiduciary, someone you trust and has your interests at heart and can hold your data and work with you on that. And a nice property of these data co-ops is it's also a governance model. With this, you can actually have voting and stake in the behavior and the actions of the co-op based on the data you produce, which is a kind of different alternative to the way we currently have governance on social media of these polls and whatnot. So these co-ops kind of offer kind of new freedom and business opportunities by acting as an intermediary between the people, the companies or the institutions, and the platforms. So through these kind of three layers, I hope I've kind of convinced you or kind of opened a conversation about interoperability. And with interoperability, if we create these kind of modules of social media that build on top of each other and let users decide what they want and create competition, then I believe that the next generation of social networks can be secure, trustworthy, and aligned with human values. Thanks so much.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for the opportunities. I think there's a lot of questions about the CBDC, central bank digital currency, whether it's like how it make the better financial system in the future, what the gaps that central banks try to close the gap or the pain points that we're facing today. So before I jump into that, on the details, I would like to lay out some of the, the big pictures of where are we up to as a central bank engaging in the central bank digital currencies research and study. So I got this from BIS survey last year that they survey 81 central banks around the world that what are they focusing, what is they doing about their works in CBDC. So you can see that the central banks, like 90% already engage the CBDC works from 2017 up until last year's increasingly. And of course, the area that they're focusing is both in the retail and the wholesale CBDC, which means that the CBDC that used for the financial institutional and also the used for the retails or the publics. So, and the data and the survey shows that many of them and some of them already, put the stage to the pilot state on the development stage, especially in the retail CBDCs. So why this so many interesting from central bank perspective that they try to engage in the CBDC space? So I can put like very simple into area that I think this is the most important, that the pain point that they try to solve. Of course, first is the international. It's a very global issues that today's the cross-border of fund transfer is very costly. It's very, low traceability, very complicated and slow. Why is that? Because, because of the payment system, is differentiated in each countries. Like Thai jurisdiction, we have our own payment system. Another countries will have their own payment system. So it's not very aligned. It's a separate system. So the key is that the reliance on intermediary is very important nowadays. The words like corresponding banks that try, when we send the money, from faraway countries, we need a lot of, corresponding bank involved in this, process of financial transactions. That makes the cross-border is very costly nowadays. Okay, another area is the domestic area. In some countries, yes, it's still a pain point because some of the countries, they cannot have, people cannot access to the banking. Some of them don't have any fast payments. But in terms of the Thai context, we don't have this kind of pain. More than 80 populations, Thai people have bank accounts. And of course, I think in the morning session, we already mentioned about the very adoptions of the fast payment here in our country is very fast. We have the PromptPay, which is 71 million account already registered, and the volumes of the transaction is very substantial. So in Thai context, we don't have any pains of the payment system and the inclusions. But I think we have room for better improvement for the futures for the retail CBDC. I'll tell you later why. Okay, let's go to the first problem about the international problem. As I mentioned earlier, that for cross-border fund transfer, we need many intermediaries involved in the process, especially the corresponding bank, the corresponding relationship between banks. So what Bank of Thailand tried to do with with our three central banks, which is the Central Bank of Hong Kong, China, and UAE, we try to set the CBDC networks. We call this project is mBridge projects. So we try to set all the networks, the CBDC networks, and try to put all the commercial banks and central banks together in these networks. And the central bank can issue the central bank digital currency to the commercial banks. And then once they have this CBDC, they can transact directly to foreign banks in another jurisdictions. So this cuts or eliminates the corresponding bank relationship. So the transactions can be done in peer-to-peer manners. One is done in peer-to-peer, so that saves a lot of cost. From our research, this mBridge can save cut the cost by half, and the process that we average from cross-border transfer is around 3 to 5 days is cut to a few seconds. So it's the benefits of the we try to set the network, the central bank network, and use it for cross borders. And last one is about the settlement risk. Of course, today, because each jurisdiction have their own system, there are TGS, real-time gross settlements. So it's very risky for have the settlements risk because the time zone, because the operation issues. But the mBridge, we create the settlement finalities, at the networks. So there is no such a settlement risk, which occurs a day. So this mBridge, we already did the pilots. I think last a couple of months, around September, and we proved that it can be achieve a lot of the benefit that I lay out here. So next year, we'll think we're gonna improve this bridge to make more into the MVP, minimum viable products, and extend some of the functionality that can be used in the futures. Next is about the retails. We got a lot of questions that what the benefit of the retail, especially in Thailand, we have compared to fast payment system that we already have. Everyone using it, it's free. So let's think about this. If you think about the payment infrastructures, I try to compare with, as a road that everyone can use, right? Today, our roads, we of course, we have we have a car, we have some players that can provide you the benefits of services on that roads. But think about the CBDC as the new infrastructures that can expand to the new players, right? Maybe, bike, tuk-tuk, or the motorcycles can be, use this road and provide very customized service, very competitive service to the end customers. So it will be very inclusivities that we think about what the benefits or the opportunity for the CBDCs. Second, talk about the innovations. So this road have to, very flexibilities in terms of the innovations compared to the existing payment system that the players have relied on a lot of their legacy system. Think about one players, they have they want innovations, right? But in order to scale or to expand their innovation, it's very hard because they have to go to one players to talk to adjust many legacy systems to cope with the new innovations. So in the design of the CBDC, we need it to scale to the new innovations. That means that one players, when they think about anything new, they can expand their innovation very easily to other players. That's what we think the second benefits if we can design CBDC in such a way. The last one is safe. When we talk about digital currency, of course, in order to let the public to use this, it has to be very safe and secure. We think the CBDC can be the foundations for publics to develop that things on top under the safe and secure by the central bank money. So I think these are the three benefits that we think that bring the opportunity in the futures. So in order to make this thing happen, it's not the easy job for the central banks because CBDC is very new. They have a lot of things that we need to think about. The guy already mentioned about the privacy issues, about the design, about the securities. So what we are going to for the development of the retail CBDCs. Bank of Thailand already announced the plans of the pilot plans that we are planning. I think we do the test starting from this month and then last until the half of next year. So the plans split into two main tracks. First is we call the foundations. Why is the foundation? Because we want to understand, we want to, see that how CBDC will be, the design of CBDC, how it should be very secure, safety. We want to understand the end-to-end process from the central bank issue pass into the intermediary and distribute to the peoples. So under the scope of the foundations, CBDC will just conduct for the basics payment activities only, and the limits of the usage is under 10,000 retail users. And we also have do the pilot with banks and non-banks in the scope of the foundation tracks. But in order to achieve our end game or our benefit of CBDC, if this foundation track is success, it's not guaranteed a success because the payment it just use like it's not gonna be the benefits because compared to what we have today, a fast payment system, it's not add any more like benefit that we already have. So the second track is kick in. We call the innovation tracks. In this track, we try to seek the answer is that how the CBDC can be utilize some of the programmability issues that many talk that they try to make the digital currency condition with other digital products. So in this innovation track, we already open for the publics that already they already send us some of the benefit use case, and we will get that some of the use case that test in our CBDC test area in IWTs. So all of this, once we're done with the pilot, we think that we're gonna evaluate all the benefits, evaluate what will be further improvement of our developments. But to be clear that nowadays, Bank of Thailand, we don't have the considerations of to issue the CBDC just yet. So we want to seek out the benefits and the use case for using that. So maybe some of you would like to see what we have been done from the project Internon 2018. There's also QR code, and this is the latest one that I mentioned, the Embridge project that we already did the pilot with the 3 central banks and some of the banks that already join our pilot for the cross borders. Thank you.
Where should I?
Afternoon. Now that we have heard the presentations from all our 4 speakers, I'll be asking questions to each of the speakers, 2 questions, and you have more or less about 5 minutes to answer each. So I would like to start with Guy, okay? Can you explain, as you already have a decentralized secure platform to store data, in the past you have experience, how can you preserve privacy while scaling the distributed system?
Right, so, sorry, can you say that last part? How can you preserve privacy while scaling?
Yeah, while scaling the distributed system.
Right, so it's a good question. So at the end of the day, building things like blockchains, Web3 in general, these systems they give us a lot of integrity. So they give us a lot of benefits, but they lack privacy. So you need other kind of solutions like very deep cryptography, let's say. But those two are kind of like in opposition. So the more cryptography you put into your system, the longer it takes to do stuff. Like just so people understand, when each one of you take your phone and log into your bank account, there's a lot of cryptography. There's encryption, there's handshakes. There's a lot of like very complicated security protocols that are happening. And if we didn't have them, then it would be much faster, right? Like that authentication, we've been able over the decades to take it from like minutes or seconds to milliseconds. So you don't feel it as much, but there's still an overhead. And now with like this Web3 and blockchain and decentralized technologies, like, yeah, they're amazing, they give us a lot of new benefits, but they're slower. And now you want to also protect privacy, you make it even slower than that. And I think the upside is that there's been billions of dollars put in both research and development into these technologies in the past years. And it's, I think the latest figure that I heard this year is that the speed of which you can scale privacy-preserving technologies, it accelerates by, like, let's say, the speed doubles every year or so. So there's an exponential speed up to making these technologies more scalable. And obviously at some point we'll saturate, but I do think that we'll end up at a place where you can almost have your cake and eat it too, right? Like you can get to a place where, kind of like with how we log into our bank account, it's fast enough so that you don't really feel the delay. There is a delay, right? But maybe it's 20%, 40, 50% more expensive, but you then get all the benefits that you want. So that would be my take.
All right, guys, I forgot to ask you the second question at the same time. The second question was,
sure.
Without accessing data in the raw form, in your case, this can preserve privacy, but on the other hand, how could the data user ensure that the data has integrity, or that the data they're working with is correct and have good quality?
So this is actually a question I've been asked for like maybe 8 years now, and it's the most important question, because if you think about, let's take Bitcoin, right? Bitcoin, the whole value proposition is that no one can double spend. If I send you Bitcoin, then, or any digital asset, doesn't matter what, but let's say Bitcoin, then you need to be comfortable, but everyone needs to be comfortable that I have those Bitcoins to send. I'm not sending them to two different people. I'm not making up coins that I don't have, because that's fraud, or that's like taking on debt that the system does not allow. So, and the point is that those systems are kind of meant to be transparent, right? Everyone needs to be able to kind of do the accounting themselves and see that no one is like inventing assets that they don't have. So how do you balance that if like everything is encrypted, everything is like completely like not, like if it's not transparent, then how can people actually verify that? And this is where these new technologies come into place. It turns out that there's types of cryptography like homomorphic encryption, multi-party computation. What technology exactly we use doesn't really matter. But the point is that there are technologies that allow us to get both. They allow us to do an operation with integrity. They allow us to prove, for example, that I did not double spend my assets. I did not invent new coins that I do not have. My credit score, for example, is above a certain threshold. Right? Well, like we can do all of that, but without actually revealing the underlying data. So you can actually do both.
So the answer to both questions, at least, is that the technology is improving every day.
It is. So it's an important point. The technology has existed for about 30 to 40 years now. Until 10 years ago, no one, like if you would ask like a cryptographer or like even people from our lab, like, hey, can I use this in practice? They would probably like laugh because it wasn't scalable enough. But the last decade, we're going like exponentially faster to making them usable. Yeah.
Thank you, Guy. The next question is for Luis, Dr. Luis. How to get a diverse group of people on your urban planning project to collaborate, especially when they don't like one another. So they have alignment and move towards the common goal. They are having conflicts, such as the case of like town planning that you show. And the second question is, part of the problem we see is the slowness of the decision making of the human side, not the technology. So the target of the system that we design for cannot be reached efficiently or quickly. So it is boiling down to what incentives should you use, and such as whether just a simple carrot and stick work or not.
Wow, yeah, super easy questions. So, well, I think the most important thing is to realize that during the last 9,000 years, let's say, we have 9,000 years, depends on who you ask, the cities, they used to be the innovation hubs where humans, we used to share ideas in a very walkable, diverse, and compact kind of ecosystem. And in the last 200 years, that has been changed. That's very interesting because what it means is that humans, we are very used to share ideas with unlikely partners. The cities, they used to be these ecosystems where you used to have unlikely partners. If we look a little bit into the, let's say, 18th, 19th century Paris, you used to have, in the first floor, you used to have the shop of a shop, okay? Then in the second floor of the building, you used to have the owner of the shop. In the next floor, you used to have the people working in the shop. In the next floor, you used to have the person cleaning, cooking, and in the attic, you have the artists, the architects, you know, people, very low-income people. But the synergy between all of these very diverse people bring the avant-gardes. Because the high-income person started looking into the person upstairs, and it was like, wow, the only person who can afford to have art is the king, and I am the new bourgeoisie, and I wanna be able to have my own art, okay? So this high-income person start talking with the low-income person in the attic, and they make synergies between them, and they build the Art Nouveau, the new art, let's say, and all the avant-gardes, and now the sector of art is huge. I mean, so that's one very quick example of how cities and innovation happen when you have diverse people sharing ideas. So every time that we go into, well, actually, the evolution with mass transportation, the cars, industrialization of the cities, this diversity has started like to break down, and every one of us is living in a small echo chamber, okay? So we are just living with people like us, sharing ideas with people like us, and now with the social networks, even if I don't like, even if I am like maybe a person that next to me, but if I don't like his ideas, I can just block him in the social network. And in COVID, we are totally isolated now. No? Even if I like the person and I want to hug the person, I cannot even hug. So we are in the most individualistic moment in history when we say that diversity is bringing innovation, okay? So what I am trying to say is that this is the first time in history that we have 25 mayors knocking at the door of the group saying, hey, I want to have an innovation district. And we are like, listen, the city should be an innovation itself. I mean, historically was the place of innovation. So to be honest, I think unlikely partners, they have hunger to work together. Even in this polarized world. We just need to give the excuse to say, hey, do you want to work with MIT? And then the magic happens. So we have collaborations, again, in 10 cities, in 5 different continents. And what we see is that as soon as you offer the opportunity to, hey, let's work together in the ecosystem of MIT through this kind of framework, people usually tries to come together and try to solve the problems, because I think humans is in our DNA to work with people that we don't like and try to solve problems. I am very positive on that. Then, how do we incentivize people to use the decentralized autonomous organizations, for instance? That's a very good question. It's something that obviously we don't know yet, but we are exploring different ideas. And first thing, usually everybody talks about gamification, okay? You need to have the gamification part, but when you look into very successful games like Pokemon, for instance, Pokemon Go, it has like a huge hype, but then in some point, lose that hype. So you need, people say that the carrot or the stick, no? You need to incentivize with a carrot or with the stick, but that's not enough. What you need to have is the gamification. Then on top of that, you need to encourage people and help people to engage with the let's say, the goal of the thing. So let's share data for a pro-social goal, okay? So if we share the data, we are gonna reduce congestion. People usually look into that and say, hey, I wanna keep playing because as much as I play, I am solving a problem. That is pollution, is climate change, etc. So that's the second thing. And the third thing is a reward, okay? Even if we are very generous, sometimes we like to have some kind of reward that is like, maybe it's an economical reward, so, or maybe it's like the community saying, okay, you are greener than this other person. So that's kind of the three elements. And in the case of the reward, if you can link that with the data, so these data cooperatives that we were talking before, maybe that reward can get directly from the tokens. So you are killing like two birds with one stone, because you are sharing data and you are incentivizing the person to share the data, but at the same time to be part of the game. So that's kind of my answer. It's very difficult questions, by the way. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you, Luis. So to Ziv, could you expand for the audience a bit on the key differences between the current and the next-gen social media? And the second question would be, since you plan to decouple the three layers of social media, which are data, algorithm, interface, in order to break the monopoly of existing platform, how would your consumer benefit from doing so? And perhaps how can we encourage efficient competition and incentive alignment at each of the layers?
Yeah, great questions. This guy really kind of cuts to the essence of the problems, I think. So just to restate that first question, we're thinking about the key differences between the centralized social media that we have today and the decentralized social networks that hopefully we'll all have tomorrow. And ultimately, I think the key thing that we'll kind of experience as users is more autonomy and agency in the way we interact with these systems. Right now, when I open up my news feed, whether it's Facebook or Twitter or whatever, I don't really know where this content's coming from. What algorithm has filtered these things? How long ago is it? What algorithm is being served to me? The interfaces, the decisions that are made, who decided that? Where does that stuff come from? Ultimately, it's a complete black box for a user of a social media platform. I don't know where my data is stored. I'm worried that if Twitter goes under tomorrow, all my adorable tweets will be gone forever. So in that world, there's not so much autonomy and agency for users interacting with their platforms. The goal of the future with decentralized social networks, I think, is more of that. So, maybe you open up your phone, you're like, you know what, today I want really serious news. I want to grapple with the complexity of the earth. Maybe you can set your news feed to give you that kind of content from people you trust. Or maybe you want to take the day off and just look at cat memes all day. That's great. You can actually choose to have the agency in what kinds of content you want. Maybe you want something that's kind of light, or it's a grayscale, so you don't feel all the colors are distracting you. Or maybe you want something very kind of bright and playful and colorful. It's all about giving humans ability to kind of express themselves and choose the kind of interactions that they want. So I think the key thing that we're really going for here is just new modes of interactivity and agency for users, since ultimately it's kind of for them and it should be for their benefit. The second question was more about, we have these three layers of an interoperable kind of modular social media system. The underlying data, the algorithms that data is filtered through, and then finally the interface that the user kind of interacts with. And I think there are these questions of how do we encourage correct competition on a free market for each of these modules, and what might it look like to kind of interact with all these things. And so I think the key thing here is, we've kind of wound ourselves into a monopolistic situation where a couple big key players control the kind of means of production in each of these modules. So I think we need, complex systems require complex interventions. We need both carrots and sticks to kind of help break this up and create these kind of new modules. So, for interfaces, we need new innovation. We need spaces for people to prototype and hack and play. And that's kind of what we're trying to do with Your Feed, is actually give people a framework within to kind of develop the next generation of these interfaces. As far as the data side, I think this data cooperatives that we've been mentioning is a really interesting and kind of exciting way to have users regain governance and control over their own data and their own experiences. And so across these things, we ultimately need innovation from startups and new actors. We need regulation from governments to break up these monopolies as well. And we need new protocols for all of these modules to talk to each other in reliable and trustworthy ways. And hopefully, if we have all of those, then we can have that kind of autonomy and agency that we deserve, I think, in our platforms. Thanks.
So the consumer finally would get the more full benefit from the existing system.
Absolutely.
All right. So the question to Kun Kasidit, the first question is how can a CBDC solve the current pain point of the financial system, especially in Thailand? The second one is fundamentally the basic principle require a CBDC to have particular core features such as authenticity, know your customer, scalability, traceability, programmability, and maybe the only legal mean of payment or not, whatever. Mm-hmm. So these two questions are yours.
Thank you very much, Kun Charampon. The first question I think is very clear from my presentations. In the context of cross-border, I think obviously it's where the current pains nowadays that everyone facing. But especially like Thai context, maybe it's very hard because we cannot find because right now I mentioned like we have a good payment, the inclusions for the individual that can access like more than 80% to the bank account. But I see these things will be the opportunities for inclusions, for new players, if the CBC can, you think about like everyone can hold like the note, right, the banking note right now. Mm. If we can have this like to penetrate in digital form and, open space for developments, for programmabilities, or what we call of payment or whatever, it will be very inclusive for the new business, for the new players to create more goods and service. That I think that's the key. The second is the scale to the innovations. As I already mentioned that with the legacy system, it's very hard to scale some of the innovations. If we can create a CBC as a network that one will have some of the innovation idea that can expand very easily. I think that what we think is the opportunities for the CBC. But of course, we need more experiment. We need more research. We need a lot of issues that we need to explore in this space. So come to the second question, that what we looking for the design of the CBDC, that what we think. That's three things for me. First, the principle is that we not gonna issue the CBC or make the CBC to have the negative impact to the economies. For example, if we're not gonna have the we use the two-tier system. That's intermediary will still have the role for distribute the CBDCs to the end user. We not bypass the intermediary right away. Another issue maybe we'll ask like, we're not gonna pay the interest rate on the CBC. That will compete a lot of the commercial banks, business, and all the things that central bank shouldn't do in that kind of activities. Second, I think the CBC should be very secure. Have to be safe. But when we come to the question of the privacy issue, I think this is one very big debate. From our current design, there's three main roles that central bank engage in the CBC. First, issue, redeem, and verifications. So we don't hold any data of individual data. So that the intermediary, as of today, that they're handling all the KYC, all the stuff that they're engaging the end customers. Mm-hmm. And the third that we're looking for is the programmability issue. This kind of tricky because when you talk about the innovations, it's always trade-off with how the space of the innovation, because trade-off with the security issues. So we need to find the right balance on that area. Yes, thank you.
All right, so basically intermediaries still around.
Yep.
Secure, privacy, and programmability, correct? Now, the last question for everyone. This topic is, this session is about the interest of values. Mm-hmm. So for Guy, the values are values about the next generation of internet. For Dr. Lewis, is the value of collaboration and mutualism. And for Ziv, is the value of the social capitalism. And of course, Kun Kasidit is the value of cryptocurrency. Now, the questions are, each of you have more or less 2.5 minutes each. The questions are, what type of governance mechanism might apply for the governance issue that each of you may have. Start off with Guy first.
Yes, I think Web3 is kind of like, if anyone is following the whole idea of Web3, and even Louis talked about DAOs and decentralized autonomous organizations, basically every community in the cryptocurrency space is kind of forming around a DAO, which is a place where a community can form around it and then vote and basically self-govern whatever decisions we have. And
That DAO is a digital autonomous organization, right?
Digital autonomous organization, yeah. So even secret, like our blockchain, it has like 250,000, give or take, people in the DAO, and like almost every week, there's some vote that someone in the community proposes, and then there's like a week voting period. Like if you go to the website now, you'll see between 2 to 3 ongoing votes ongoing. So it's really cool to see these self-organizing communities of hundreds of thousands of people coming together, making up ideas on how to improve the state of things, and then all of them voting on it. And the only requirement to vote is to have some stake or interest in the project, usually in the form of a token. And the other interesting angle, and this is something that we kind of tried, so usually DAOs, the votes are public. Actually, they're always public. And we kind of tried to use our encryption technology to also do a private DAO voting. So basically make sure that when people vote in the DAOs, you cannot see like how individuals vote. Because today when you vote publicly, for example, I'm fairly influential in my own network. If I vote, usually I see many other people kind of follow my lead and vote like I do. And then when we did the private voting, like people completely ignored my advice because they didn't know what I'm voting. So it's really, really interesting to see how those dynamics kind of come into play.
Okay, Luis?
I totally agree. I think DAOs fits very well with the challenge that we have. But to be honest, I mean, we first have the challenge. That is, how can we help communities to make decisions together? And then through following that path is how we got into DAOs and decentralized. In our case, we are saying decentralized autonomous organizations as well, because it's not only digital, it's also decentralized. So that's quite important. And the good thing about the DAO also is that you can even change the structure of the voting. So we have 2 PhDs, Yasushi and Ryan, and they're exploring the idea of saying, well, maybe even the community will change, okay, because you have explained anonymization when you vote, etc. But imagine that the community decides, no, and this needs to be a public vote or whatever. They can organize and even change the structure of the DAO, the rules of the DAO. So I think it's giving enough flexibility in order to have communities, like human communities, making decisions together in a mutualistic way. So it's the technical side, but also like the flexibility and the plasticity of this kind of tools. So I totally agree.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's super interesting to hear these perspectives, because when we're thinking about trust in networks and how we can build and encode trust into these computational tools, a thread through all of this is this idea of incentives. The idea that there's all these kind of actors throughout the system, and you don't need to necessarily trust the kind of good intentions of everyone because incentives are aligned. And I think in social media, it's a clear example where incentives are not aligned right now. If you're a user and you're a member of the platform itself, your incentives could not be more different. Users want to connect with their other people, gain information about the world, and coordinate their actions to kind of fight for a better future. Whereas the platforms are right now extracting behavioral surplus from users, building these mental models, and trying to package and sell that to advertisers. And this mismatch of incentives is creating a lot of the problems of echo chambers and misinformation that we see today. So, the key of aligning these incentives is a governance issue, because the second you bring the users of platforms into the conversation of how these platforms should be designed, then boom, their incentives are aligned, and we'll get a lot of the good behaviors that we want already. So, DAOs, these decentralized autonomous organizations, data co-ops, there's a lot of these kind of new Web3-based technologies that can really allow users to be in that room, have stake and kind of decision-making capabilities when we think about how we want to design these platforms. So I think giving these users the tools to make these decisions is a great way to increase governance across the board and align incentives.
All right. So the last person, since you're the last, I'll give you a special twist. It's about CBDC governance. Actually, 2 days ago, I heard in the news in the car while I was driving that the Thai Drug Enforcement Agency now has a program to encourage whistleblower, try to promote more whistleblower about the drug case. They are applying blockchain to protect their identities of whistleblower and allow the use of cryptocurrency to pay for the rewards as a mean of payment. So, but in general, in any countries, we require to be abide by the local law. In our case, is the Currency Act, right? So, to the central banker, what guidelines you might give to the innovators like the Department of Drug and Enforcement Agency, the governance related to the use of payment media that sort of apply to the how to apply the cryptocurrency. Yep.
It's a very hard question and keep the best for the last. I see that the things in this way. You cannot, just jump right away. That is the correct use case or the correct tool that you're going to use the cryptocurrency for that purpose. This case is bring the one side of the benefits. But if we think about the other side, the coin have two sides, right? If of course, if the cryptos be a means of payments, what will be, the implication of that is that about the other side will be used for the illicit activities, AML, CFT, that the official office governor, the authority have to, look in both ways to the total benefit of these. You cannot use just only one use case to, make the case that it should be used in this kind of, means of payments. Yeah.
Thank you. And at least one good thing that we notice is that actually there are many people, many companies and agencies like this that actually try to find a new way of doing things. It looks like they definitely had a pain, right? And they see the opportunity, and I believe they believe that the technology is ripe for them to do. That's why they keep announcing with the new way of doing things. I think the two combination of having a great pain plus the right technology can move things forward. Well, thank you very much for all the great speakers. Thank you. Please give a hand to all the speakers.
Thank you so much. Thank you to all of our speakers and moderators for your contribution in this session. Interests of values, digital currency, Web3, and trustworthy network. Thank you for sharing with us the possibilities and challenges of the decentralized networks from all the speakers today. Thank you so much again, Mr. Guy Siskin, Dr. Louis Alonso, Sip Epstein, Kun Kasidit Tan Sangwan, and our moderator, thank you so much for doing the honor, Kun Jarampon Chotika Satien, who is the director of the Bangkok Bank. Ladies and gentlemen, on our second day of the forum, in our afternoon sessions, we still have 2 more sessions coming up to keep you inspired. One of them is about the material alchemists, bits, atoms, and magic. You'll be hearing from our speakers, which are Professor Hiroshi Ichii. Imandi Wijaksono also will be with us later, and Dr. David Kong. And the moderator for that session will be Kun Chanawut Sawaddi. But first, ladies and gentlemen, the previous session was quite an interesting session itself, and there are lots of opportunities to explore in the digital age. However, ladies and gentlemen, we are not done with the word digital yet. So it's time to move on to the next session of Extended Mind, from artificial intelligence to intelligence amplification. We'll be hearing from Professor Patty Mays, Professor Deblina Sarga, and Guy Siski will still be with us in this session. And this session will be moderated by Dr. Chonikan Jira, who is the head of Digital Academy from True Digital Group. So first, ladies and gentlemen, please give it up for our first speaker, Professor Patty Mays.
Hello. So the question that I want to ask in my talk today is, how will we live and work with artificial intelligence? Over 70 years ago, the field of artificial intelligence was created, and from the get-go, or from the start, it was defined as having machines do things that are very sophisticated and difficult, and having the machine do them equally well or better than people can. Now, this goal has actually guided artificial intelligence research since then, and current AI systems actually surpass humans in many narrow tasks. So the researchers in the field have over and over picked something that people are good at, something sophisticated like seeing images or making medical diagnosis or understanding language or playing chess, Go, etc. And then they've tackled that problem of trying to build a machine that can do it equally well or better than people can. Now, very few human jobs, though, require only narrow expertise like that of these existing AI systems. I will argue today that we should develop artificial intelligence with human collaboration in mind and in the context of use by people. Erik Brynjolfsson, a colleague who's now at Stanford University, talks about this as the Turing trap in an article that he published recently in Daedalus journal. He actually talks about how Alan Turing, who defined sort of the ultimate test for AI, namely that you can't really distinguish whether someone behind the screen is really human or computer. So he developed that, or he came up with that test for AI, and that is what has guided AI researchers since then, with the result that AI has always been positioned in opposition to people. There's this competition between artificial intelligence and people. Now, Erik Brynjolfsson calls this the Turing trap, and he argues that we would actually be much better off as society if we actually aim for augmenting human behavior rather than human intelligence and human work, rather than replacing people with machines. So in this article, he talks about how there would actually be a lot more economic value created and a lot more advantages if we actually reoriented that goal of artificial intelligence to be about helping people do super amazing things as opposed to replacing people or doing equally well as people. Now, unfortunately, Alan Turing has been really guiding AI research for the last 70 years, and most AI systems typically sort of are developed by engineers who then drop the AI system in a human context of people that have to use the system. And of course, that often fails. It fails because of lack of trust by people that have to work with the AI because they weren't involved in developing the AI. It fails because the AI is not developed with a larger context of the workflow in mind, so it's unclear where the AI fits in the human workflow. It fails because people are very unpredictable in terms of how they will use or abuse an AI. And last, it fails in that we don't really think about the long-term consequences of introducing or dropping these AI systems into a human context. For example, will people overly rely on AI and forget how they should be doing things, and more? Now, in contrast, I have been arguing since many years ago, 35 years ago, that we should actually aim for intelligence augmentation, or augmenting human intelligence. And the difference in terms of the approach is that given a particular problem domain, you design a combined system consisting of people and a smart machine that collaborate together to really take on the task better than either people or the machine can. So the Media Lab's focus in AI is really on people. How can we develop and deploy smart systems for the betterment of people and humanity? Can we use AI to improve how people learn, how people work, how people make decisions, how people communicate, etc.? I'll focus specifically today on how we could actually design human augmentation systems or intelligence augmentation systems that help people in a work context. For example, systems that together with a human can make better decisions than either the human or the system alone. All of us are constantly bombarded by statements, whether it is politicians trying to convince us of something, or advertisements, or maybe in a business meeting, somebody is making a statement. And we actually often don't really think deeply about whether the statement that we just heard is true or false. So we have been building systems that assist people, for example, by giving you a second opinion. Pat here, together with Vault, built a system that listens to statements that a person hears. It's actually in the form of a pair of glasses with a microphone and a speaker built in. The system listens to statements, and it will actually give the person real-time advice, saying, the statement you just heard was not supported with evidence, so you should think about it carefully whether you want to accept it or not. And we showed that by having a system like this, especially when that system also provides explanations and says the statement you just heard is supported by evidence, so, or the statement you just heard is not supported by evidence, etc. When you do that, people plus this machine, the combined system, makes better decisions about which statements are logically valid or not. Now, we did that first study, and then we followed up with a second study where we actually built an AI system that is misleading and that sometimes gives negative advice. And we learned that, unfortunately, when a person is being helped in real time to decide whether a statement is true or false by an AI system that is not always truthful, people will actually perform worse than they would without help from an AI system. So it turns out that people, when an AI system sounds convincing and has an explanation for why you should either believe something or not believe something, even if that explanation is wrong, people tend to accept the advice of the AI system. So we are too gullible or too believing, and we trust AI too much. And that is actually a big danger, that people stop thinking for themselves when they are assisted by AI. So in a most recent experiment that we did, we built an AI that uses the Socratic questioning methods to encourage a person to think deeply about a particular problem before the AI system gives its own recommendation on whether the statement you just heard is true or false. And it turns out that, and I'll spare you the details of the graphs, but that performs the best, or we have the best performance of the human plus combined, the human plus AI system, if the AI actually encourages the person to think for themselves first before giving its answer. So that's the kind of work that we do in our group to figure out how we can design AI systems that best help people with decision making. We also do a lot of work on systems that help us learn. You already heard a little bit from Pat about
Today,
this.
we will learn about
quantum mechanics.
It is the description of the behavior of
So we've been building these systems, these virtual characters that can actually act as a teacher for a person. And we showed in another experiment that the people who like the teacher, in our case, and this was actually, I have to say, done 3 years ago when there were still many people that liked Elon Musk. It would be hard to do this experiment now, but we did this 3 years ago. Many people admired Elon Musk, and the people that admired him, when they had Elon Musk as their teacher to teach them something, they actually did better. They were more motivated to learn. They wanted to learn more about the topic that Elon was teaching them about, etc., than a generic character. So we can personalize the teacher for a student using artificial intelligence and thereby make the student be more motivated to learn. In another experiment, my student Joanne Leong built an AI system that helps a person develop confidence by helping them envision what they could basically be like in the future. So this was an experiment to help people with talking in a self-confident way, giving public speeches. And Joanne actually used this system where you can upload the picture of a participant, and then you can turn the participant into a confident speaker. Sorry, I don't know whether the video is working. No, sorry, the video is not working. But what you would have seen is that we can make any person look like a very confident speaker by doing this transfer basically onto an existing video of the likeness, the face of a person. And it turns out that if you do that and then you ask people to give a public speech before being prepared or without being prepared, they do a lot better when they have seen themselves talking confidently, even though it wasn't them. It was a video that we created of them talking confidently. Then they did better and performed better afterwards. We've also recently been using AI techniques to personalize the contents of teaching lessons. When you learn a particular word or vocabulary word like predilection, typically you get a very generic type of definition, and we have been using generative AI to create a definition and a picture for that word that is highly personalized or customized to a student's interests. So for Pat, maybe the system would give an example of the sentence with the word dinosaur in it, because he loves dinosaurs, while for the person here, the example sentence uses something from the context or the world of Superman, because the student is interested in that. Or if you're interested in the monarchy in England, then you get definitions for the vocab words that involve the queen and her corgi, dogs, etc. So we can personalize the contents of learning to make people, again, more motivated to learn things. Now, last, I want to talk about generative AI and how AI will be used to help people with being creative. I'm sure you have all heard by now of systems like DALL-E and ChatGPT and GPT-3, etc., that make it possible to create an image or a text, etc., just by giving very few inputs, textual inputs. And you can now use these systems to create videos and text and pictures. Like here, I made some paintings. It took me 5 seconds to do that, of the Charles River in Cambridge in the Monet style of Monet, or buildings inspired by forests, or you can create logos for a particular project that you have, slogans. This is a slogan the GPT-3 came up with for the Media Lab, which is pretty good. Yesterday, I asked ChatGPT whether AI will replace people, and it gave me a very thoughtful answer. Basically, it gave me the answer that I'm advocating here in my speech, pretty much. These systems can also be used to create 3D objects. For example, here, my student, in time for Halloween, created a vase and a teapot and a teacup inspired by flesh and bones. He just gave one sentence input to Midjourney, another one of these generative AI systems, that was then turned into a 3D version of the object by another AI system, and that was then turned into a mesh and 3D model that could be printed by a 3D printer. So anyone can just describe the object they want, a vase in the shape of an avocado or whatever, a mango, and have it printed on the other side by a 3D printer. We are now creating videos just based on these simple text inputs. These generative systems are used in research, for example, to create proteins, new protein targets for drug development. They are used to upscale images in medical research. All of this is the same generative type of AI. And we can use them to generate code. Increasingly, programmers are just asking AI to write a first version of their code for something, and then they still have to check it, of course, but the AI does a lot of the work for them. We can go further, create conversational characters, which are increasingly going to be used for customer service, for accompaniment of people, for therapy, etc. So generative AI is really changing the way we create things and the way people discover and innovate. However, we have to keep in mind that there are a lot of challenges. These systems that can create these amazing images and text and so on don't have any real understanding of the world. Their behavior is occasionally hard to control, and so it's important that there's always a person using these systems and guiding these systems. Every once in a while, there answers are spectacularly bad and even dangerous, so we cannot rely on them because they don't have real understanding. They are biased. They can be used, of course, for deep creation of deep fakes and fake news. It's unclear what the rights are of the original creators of images and how we should regulate the rights and IP and all of that of these images and texts that are created. And last but not least, and this actually relates to our next speaker, the energy consumption of these systems is enormous. And if we increasingly all rely on these generative AI systems to help us create, to help us discover, that will be a big problem for the climate. So in summary, I would like to say AI is definitely bound to completely change our lives and especially how we work. But to ensure best outcomes, AI should be designed to augment people rather than replace them, thereby supercharging individuals, groups, and collective human intelligence. Thank you.
I talked about how we can fuse nanoelectronics with biology to create a new paradigm for life-machine symbiosis. And today I'm going to tell you how to create energy-efficient nanoelectronic devices which can be used to run artificial intelligence in an environmentally sustainable way. And beyond artificial intelligence, how we can use these nanoelectronic devices to even extend human intelligence beyond the capabilities of biology. So why is energy efficiency important in developing electronics? So all of you must have noticed how your laptop heats up after working for some time. So the heat generated is so high that a while ago I even cooked an egg on my laptop. So this power consumption of information technology is so high that data centers of large corporations actually use as much electricity as a small country like Turkey. And specifically with this rise of artificial intelligence, this problem is even aggravated more. So it is predicted that by 2040, AI is going to consume about 10 to the power 27 joules of energy. This is far beyond what even human race is going to be able to generate by then. So let us understand where this energy consumption of electronics is coming from. So your computer has 1 billion switches in them. And in those switches, the electrons need to jump over an energy barrier to cause current flow. When this barrier is high, very few electrons goes from source to the drain, and your transistor or electronic switch is off. Now, when you want to turn on the transistor, you apply voltage to another terminal called gate. You reduce the barrier height. Now, more electrons can go from source to the drain, and your transistor or electronic switch turns on. Now, this way of switching from off to on takes a certain amount of voltage. So ideally, you would want this transition from off to on state to be very steep so that you can apply a very small amount of voltage and turn the transistor on. But we do not live in an ideal world. In a practical world, what happens is that this transition from off to on state is gradual. So you need a certain amount of voltage to turn your transistor on. And that leads to a problem in energy consumption. So this energy consumption can be divided into two parts, the off-state power consumption and the on-state power consumption. So let's talk about the off-state. So what happens when you want to make your transistor smaller and smaller? So many of you must have heard about the Moore's law. So we are really interested in making the transistors as small as possible, because then we can put in a lot of this transistor in the same area of the chip, and thus can increase the efficiency of our electronics chip. But when we want to make this transistor smaller, this gate is no more efficient in controlling the current properly. So you have a lot of leakage current or off-state power. Now, in the world of electronics, a rule of thumb is that thinner you can make the channel of your electronic switch, the smaller it can also be in the lateral size. Now the question is, how thin can we make the channel? We can actually make the channels atomically thin. By using materials such as transition metal dichalcogenides, we can make the channels of the transistors only few atoms in thickness. And with such atomically thin channels, we can actually tackle this off-state power problem. So that's about the off-state power, but what about the on-state power of the transistor? There actually we hit a more fundamental limitation, and that is because of the thermal distribution of electrons in the source, which really limits how steeply we can turn on the transistor. And this challenge arises from the fact that electrons in a conventional transistor has to jump over an energy barrier to cause current flow, which is not that energy efficient. So what if instead of making the electrons really sweat over to jump over an energy barrier, just make it speak through a barrier like a ghost going through a wall? Now, you must be thinking, how is that possible? Because I cannot just go through a wall like this. So while classical physics says that it is not possible, quantum mechanics says it is possible because every particle, specifically the small ones like electrons, have wave-particle duality. And using this quantum mechanical principle, we can actually make these electron waves go through an energy barrier without having to cross over or jump over the energy barrier. And this principle is called quantum mechanical tunneling effect. But it is not so easy to use this tunneling effect in a practical way. And this is because suppose there is this guy here who really likes low power and thinks that I'm just going to sneak through an energy barrier. But by the time he reaches the other side of the barrier, he will probably look something like this. And this is because the electron waves decay exponentially as it passes through an energy barrier. So the tunneling probability is very, very low. So designing a practical transistor which has very high tunneling probability is extremely, extremely difficult, and scientists for decades had not been able to solve this problem. To achieve such a challenge and to solve such a challenge, there are few things have to happen. We need a very intricate tunneling transistor design. First of all, you have to make sure that the electric field in the tunneling junction is extremely high. Moreover, you have to make sure this tunneling barrier width as well as the tunneling barrier height is very small. And all of this have to happen at the same time. So next I will discuss a tunneling transistor that we had developed which overcomes this fundamental limitation in power of present transistors. So for designing these transistors, what we employed is a heterostructure. We use a heterostructure of 3D material and a 2D material. And we use this structure in such a way that we were able to basically employ the base properties of 3D and 2D materials to create a highly doped source region which creates a very high electric field at the tunnel junction. We also chose these 3D and 2D materials judiciously, so we were able to make the tunneling barrier height also very small. Moreover, the design of the transistor was such that we made sure the barrier width was defined by the width of the channel. And by using these atomically thin materials, we were able to make the width of this tunneling barrier only few atoms in thickness. In this case, only 6 atoms in thickness tunneling barrier. With this transistor design, so you can see the TEM image of such a heterostructure here. And with this transistor design, we showed that we were, for the first time, overcome the fundamental limitation of power in the current transistors that goes into your computer today. Moreover, this is also the world's thinnest channel tunnel field effect transistor. That means, as I said, that as you make the channel thinner, you can also laterally scale them. So this not only allows power scalability, but for the first time, simultaneous power as well as dimensional scalability. We are currently extending this technology to create energy-efficient hardware for artificial intelligence. So when you think of artificial intelligence, you often think of them as software or algorithms, but that there has to be tangible computer and electronics which run the artificial intelligence system. And their energy needs are humongous. And what we have shown that with our neuromorphic devices, we are able to get more than 10,000 times reduction in energy for doing machine learning tasks compared to conventional transistors. And by able to have energy reduction by more than 4 orders of magnitude, that can lead to humongous reduction in greenhouse gases, and that could help us to combat climate change. So with this fundamentally new device design and computing paradigm, we will be able to design artificial intelligence which are environmentally sustainable and green in nature. And going beyond just artificial intelligence, we can use these energy-efficient nanoelectronic devices to even enhance human intelligence beyond the capabilities of biology. So if you think of biological computation, that happens through structural changes in proteins or through movement of heavy ions, which are slow. In contrast, the computation in transistors happen through transport of electrons, which is super fast and versatile in nature. So if you can bring in this versatility of your electronic computation into the fundamental building blocks of biology, which is a single cell, that we can create unprecedented opportunities to enhance the capabilities of our body and mind. And if you think of intelligence, the brain is the seat of our intelligence. And in the brain, we have regions called synapses. Synapses are regions through which neurons in the brain talk to other neurons, and that's how information processing in the brain happens, right? That's how we think, that's how we take decisions. Now imagine a paradigm. You can replace this biological synapse with an electronic one. What can you do? Whatever you can do with your computer today, you can do with the brain. Just like today, you download a software and install it to run an application, you can actually download and install a software in your brain to learn a new skill. So if you want to learn a new language or learn taekwondo, a new martial arts skill, you will not need to have years of training. You can actually download a software in your brain and learn that in minutes. And this will not be sci-fi anymore. This will become a scientific reality very soon. And in Media Lab, we are already developing such cyborg cells and cyborg brains, and some of the examples I showed you in yesterday's talk. With such cyborg technologies, we will be able to enhance our cognitive skills. We'll be able to increase our memory. We'll be able to extend the world of our imagination. And beyond all, we will be able to extend our intelligence, our human intelligence, beyond the capabilities of biology. Thank you very much.
Everyone. I'm going to take a different route. First of all, Patty's and Deblina's talks were amazing. I learned a lot, especially the previous talk kind of threw me back to my undergrad electrical engineering days, and the future is indeed bright. Now, when it comes to AI, I'm going to take, let's say, a different perspective. So I think it's no surprise, right? Like Patty mentioned this, we're all seeing this. There's something happening with AI right now. And I think I saw Sam Altman, like one of the leading people behind OpenAI, tweeting like a week or two ago that it seems that we're going into the exponential phase of AI growth. And I tend to agree, although I'm just not a layman, but almost a layman in that. But I tend to agree that we're seeing something big happens. And I just for these slides, like 2 days ago, I went to ChatGPT myself and said, okay, hey, can you write an academic love song on my behalf? And the result was astounding, right? It's like so much better than what I could have produced on my own. So again, things like LLM, large language model, GPT, others, they are really promising in what they can provide. But as with all things, there's trade-offs, there's costs, and the kind of like the focus I want to put in this conversation is, maybe what we're gaining short term, we should think about what we might be losing longer term. And the way things are kind of evolving is that AI right now is moving very, very fast. But it's moving very, very fast under closed doors, if I may say. It seems that the data, the models that are being trained, the improvements are slowly consolidating into a smaller group of entities, a smaller group of companies. Now, these companies are doing great work, don't get me wrong. These research institutions, again, MIT is a bit privileged, we're doing great work, everyone is doing great work. But the problem is that decentralizing effect basically means that over time, the long tail of potential, the long tail of people, the long tail of research institutions, the long tail of startups, they're going to be left out of the AI advancement game, and that is a loss for society, right? Likely, and this is something that in my group, Human Dynamics, we've done a lot. We're doing a lot of social intelligence prediction. We're taking social systems, social network data, working over human-to-human interactions, and you see again and again that if you let a system run wild, it will always tend to centralization. And when it tends to centralization, you don't get to the optimal point. You get maybe like a local optima or something like that, but you can do better. You can do better by kind of shuffling the group, shuffling the people, making things a bit more exclusive so that you get a diverse set of opinions, a diverse set of advancements, and you don't just consolidate towards an echo chamber. And I think that AI today is going exactly to that place, and even beyond the utility part, there's actually considerations around ethical considerations and considerations around data privacy, because all of these large companies, they become these honeypots of all of our data. And so this isn't a Web3 talk, we had one before, but just to take a very, very quick detour to that, I think what Web3 really did well in the last 10 years is to kind of show how you can actually accelerate innovation by creating a system where it's very, very inviting. It's very inviting to build a community. It's very inviting for researchers, for developers, for companies to kind of come together towards a specific goal. And also, I think for the first time, open source systems are not new, but for the first time, Web3 kind of solved the problem of actually fundraising for these efforts. Right? There's many communities today. If you take Ethereum, for example, Ethereum today has hundreds of research institutes and researchers and companies working on it. And they all kind of rallied around this idea of the Ethereum community, the benefits that it can provide, and also, not less importantly, funding. There's a lot of money going into that system, and as the system grows, Ethereum grows in value, and there's kind of more funding to go around. So actually, this is, I wanted to skip that, but I'll tell that very, very quickly. Did anyone hear about Constitution DAO? It was a very interesting story. Right, very few people. So Constitution DAO was this effort. This is an example of how these Web3 communities kind of come together to fund a single goal, and then how they can actually use, they actually help advance the state of the art in research. So Constitution DAO, very quickly, they came last year. Within a week, they formed this open source group where people could amass their funds, send their funds in, and then the DAO itself went together and bid on the US Constitution. There are 2 copies, as far as I know, of the US Constitution, and the Constitution DAO put $40 million within a week, crowdsourced, crowdfunded by people. So that's really cool by itself, but they lost the bid. And the reason they lost the bid was because this was public. Everyone could see how much money the DAO has amassed and what their highest bid is. And so what happened, there was, I think, a JP Morgan executive who was in the sale, in the public bidding process, and he simply bid just slightly above what they could bid. And he won, and they lost. And now there's a round 2. There's another, now the second copy is being sold, and the same DAO is reamassing their funds, but now they brought in researchers, leading researchers, to help them amass the funds in a way that they can prove via technological means that they're not going to be like misusing or misappropriating the funds, but without actually revealing how many funds have been accumulated to prevent that. So this is an example about how these communities amass in real life in an open source way, get funding, and actually get like the research going and advancing. And I think what we should hope for and strive for is to kind of combine these 2 ideas and bring them to the AI front. So there's this concept of federated learning. Are people familiar with, how many people are familiar with federated learning? Okay, so slightly more, but I will still give an example. Federated learning is this simple idea that, let's say, Apple, for example, they have their Siri model. That's a very, very sophisticated AI. But to preserve user privacy, what they do is they send the model to each of our phones, and then locally, Siri is improving on our phone locally, the model is improving locally, and then the only thing that we send back to Apple is the delta for the new model, and then Apple can aggregate from all the people in the world and improve its own AI in a relatively privacy-preserving manner. But this is still fairly closed source. The only one we benefit from that as users. Our privacy is fairly protected. There are caveats, but we are losing one thing, and that is, and Apple is losing one thing as well, is because they're keeping the model behind closed doors. It's only their researchers that can work with it. No one else can contribute, so it's still not open source. And our idea, and what we're working on at the lab, is we're thinking, can we actually combine the 2 ideas? Can we create a decentralized collaborative AI model? And the idea would be here, essentially, that instead of a company holding the AI model, like getting all the benefits, only letting like their researchers, their employees to kind of focus on that, can we create an open system, an open source AI, where the model lives on chain, anyone can come in and contribute, like I can come with my phone or as any client and contribute my own data or slightly update the model, but researchers could come on top and try to poke around the model, improve it, play around with it, reuse it in their own research, right? Maybe I'm a medical researcher and I have some, a cancer treatment I wanna try out. Maybe there's an open on-chain model I can bootstrap my own model with. Like the possibilities are endless. But this only works if we have such an open source AI system. Now, I'm not going to get into the technicalities. A lot of the research that we're doing is actually how you make this available. There's like different types of cryptography and privacy-preserving techniques, but that's not as important. What's important is what we get at the end of the day. And what we get at the end of the day is an open source AI system that both protects user data and allows everyone to participate. It's open access, and that's true for users who want to contribute, and that's true for researchers who want to interact with it and improve it. But the other angle from it is that also this can actually create a very interesting and sustainable business model. So if you think about research today, oftentimes research, like you take a sample of people, you do some social science research on them of any kind, and you usually give some incentive, like there's a budget to incentivize participants. So why can't we use the same mechanism here? I mean, the answer is we should use. And blockchains, they kind of give like a very natural way to do this, right? Like you can pay people seamlessly with a cryptocurrency, or you can even invent a new token and pay with that, right? It's like almost like a match made in heaven, in my opinion. And I guess to final, maybe just to kind of, before I wrap up, I think given a concrete example that I saw, where I said, okay, this idea is like a perfect fit for that, there's this, I think a very nice, very interesting blockchain project ongoing. It was very popular last year, slightly less popular today. But it's this project where it's called StepN, and they essentially tell you something very simple. Download our app, and the more exercise you do, which should help you be more healthy, then the more tokens you earn. And there's like social incentives and all that, and they do that payments with cryptocurrencies. But the reason I'm not using it for the most part is because I'm concerned about what they do with the data, when it comes to data privacy. But assuming we can solve that, that kind of location data, they're probably not the most capable people when it comes to AI. That's not their comfort zone, that's not their business, that's not their qualification. But what if they could actually run inside of such a decentralized collaborative AI system and take the data and in an encrypted form and all that people are contributing, like they already have the mechanism, it's a lot of location data, and then allow researchers to reuse that and improve that model. And the last part I want to mention to kind of finish off is, I think it's already clear that to get this adopted, you really got to incentivize people. Again, you really got to, at the end of the day, if you want millions of people to come and contribute, the way to align incentives is to probably have some form of payment. But throwing money at a problem is usually not the right way. Being in the startup world for 10 years, I learned that the hard way. Putting more money into something isn't necessarily the best way to do. It's really about resource allocation. And to give another example from our lab, in human dynamics, we've done a lot of work into capital allocation. And that's the idea of, let's say you have a social network and you want to achieve some social good. In this case, you want to train an AI better. How can you do that with a set budget in the most efficient way possible? And 10 years ago or so, there was this DARPA Red Balloon Challenge. It was this challenge where DARPA in the US, they spread, I think, 5 or 10 balloons across the United States in really remote locations. And the challenge was, who would be the first research institution or research group that would be able to actually find all of these? Now, clearly, there's no way to do this alone. So this was really about taking a budget and properly spreading out the incentives so that people and the people online would help you do that. And that's exactly what we did, and the MIT Media Lab, and our group specifically, won that challenge, I think, out of thousands of teams. And the point I'm trying to make is that any such system, which I think is beneficial, really got to focus a lot on how to properly assign and align incentives for this to work. So takeaway message, I think for the improvement on AI, we really got to think about long-term, not just short-term. And in my opinion, it's a lot about moving from these closed-source AI systems to more open-source AI systems. Thank you very much. Should I just stay? Keep the water. Yeah, I'm joking.
Wow, that was truly inspiring, right? In the past 45, 50 minutes or so, we've gone everywhere, right? We've gone through the smallest parts of our body. We've gone through talking about art. We've gone above and beyond into the web, right? We've seen so many fascinating cases of how AI can not only just coexist, but augment our creativity, augment our intelligence. That's truly, truly amazing. I have so many questions, and I'm sure you have many questions as well. So what we are trying to do here, right? I will ask some questions first, but we would also like to open it up for questions from the audience as well. So I'll be sure to leave maybe around 10 minutes towards the end that we can have a discussion. So please help prepare your questions. There will be microphone kind of going your way, and prepare to raise your hands towards the end, right? But let's start first. Guys, some questions for you first. Very interesting on kind of the decentralized AI, so on and so forth, right? So my question here is the most immediate applications. What would you expect the first applications of this open source, decentralized AI to be, and what would be the main beneficiary? Who would be the main beneficiary for this?
Sure, so I mean, I think two applications that come to mind are, and again, this is my own bias, right? I'm a developer. I think these are all these developer aids, developer AI aiding systems, but they usually fail when you try to take them to more like domain-specific areas or things that require a bit more expertise. And to me, like that's exactly where like more decentralization happen, right? Like if we can give like smaller developer communities, maybe communities that are more adept in cryptography or communities that are more adept in like microservices or whatnot, to kind of help train the model better, then I think that's where it can be really helpful.
Got it. So finding the right adopters
Right.
to train them. Okay.
Right.
Another related question, right? You talked about decentralized AI, all these things that we should think about, you know, equity, agency, so on and so forth, right? In developing this, what does success look like for you? Like, what do you think about measuring, and how do you, you know, balance all these kind of KPIs, if you say, right? Equity, agency with like efficiency, cost, productivity, so on and so forth.
So I think the most important KPI is to start to build these models, start to build this kind of like decentralized AI. And if at the end of the day, the large companies like the Google and the Facebooks and the others of the world are actually starting to tap into these and are starting to work with the community to build these, then we know this is the right model, right? Because like they found it so efficient such that they'd rather not work in their closed gardens, but instead collaborate with like the